Good evening and welcome to the program The Desk on Global Television. Time for once again for us to look at trending issues of national and global importance as we look at issues from Ukraine and the Middle East across board and bring you back to Nigeria where we look at issues of national importance. My name is Anthony Momodi. Welcome to today's edition. The promise is to be very revealing as we go deep into very important issues. We'll be looking at the Russian army, which on Thursday launched a massive attack on Ukraine's energy sector, forcing emergency power outages as temperatures dropped across the country. Ukraine's energy grid has been heavily targeted since Russia's invasion in February 2022, with Kiev accusing Moscow of terror tactics by trying to plunge Ukrainian cities into darkness and cut off heating of to civilians throughout the winter. So we'll be looking at the implication of this move by Russia and what the implication would be, especially NATO already backing Ukraine by that they have the U.S. long-range missiles, which they had already fired into Russian, borders. We'll be looking at other issues making the rounds from the Ukraine invasion. We'll be taking you across other very deep, important talking points of national importance, as also we know that Europe is also watching closely what's playing out in Ukraine. Also, we'll take you to a very interesting talking point by Nigeria's former head of state in the person of Yakubu Gowon, as Nigeria's former head of state and elder statesman General Yakubu Gowon retired, has explained why he championed the creation of 12 states in Nigeria and why he was in office as head of state. Gowon said that the rationale was aimed at dousing tension and removing the fear of a northern domination by other component parts of the federation. He also did state that when the delegation of Senator Ibrahim Shekaru-led League of Northern Democrats paid him a courtesy visit. So we'll be looking at, so it seems like this has always been this fear, this dominating spirit or move by certain regions to dominate other parts of the country, and that's why there was an initial split of 12 states. And so we'll be looking at the talking point. Has anything changed despite after the split of 12 states? Now we've got 36 states, and is that same region still dominating? Is one of the talking points we'll be looking on today's edition. We'll also be taking you to the southeast where the issue of Simon Ekpa is still playing. Biafran agitator in the person of Simon Ekpa, arrested in Finland for alleged terrorism-related activities, is scheduled to face charges in May 2025, potentially, according to the Finnish authorities. Just to let you know that a senior detective superintendent at the Finland's National Bureau of Investigation, talking about Mikko Laaksonen, confirmed to Global Television via email on Tuesday that the district court had set May 2025 as the deadline for prosecutors to present possible charges against Ekpa. The Finnish government had last week announced the arrest of Ekpa alongside 4 others on suspicion of terror-related activities. So we'll be looking at this closely. What would this mean in terms of Nigeria's quest to extradite Simon Ekpa back to the country? Is this a move by the Finnish authorities to dampen that move already, or this would also make it even easier for Nigeria? Is the big question we'll be asking when we look at that issues from a closer perspective. All right, from Simon Ekpa's issue and facing trials, first detained and now released in Finland, we'll be taking other issues of national interest. We'll be still talking about the southeast. We've got the big story that reactions have continued to trail the arrest of the self-acclaimed Prime Minister of Biafra, Simon Ekpa, with some southeast indigenes calling for his sentencing and then the freeing of Nnamdi Kanu. So it reminds you of that story in the Bible where it was about saying, keep Barnabas and free Barnabas and hold Jesus. So that scenario likens to what played out in the past. So we'll be looking at these issues closely. Why the people of the South is asking for Nigeria to hold Simon Ekpa but free Nnamdi Kanu. We'll be looking at that issue from a very different perspective on today's edition of the program, The Desk. So we've got a lot of talking points on the desk this evening. Talking points, also not forgetting one of the key issues, talking about tax reforms is another very interesting talking point. Already the Senate has already passed for second reading in terms of the tax reform bills. Already we were told that this is likely to pass the third reading. So we'll be looking at this, what this would mean to the entire country, knowing that the South and the northern region are already split in terms of these new tax reforms. All this is what we'll be looking at on the decks. That's what we've got on the deck this evening. We'll go for a quick break. When we return from the break, we'll be introducing our guests. Hopefully, we'll be joined by Jude Nkwe, who is a public affairs analyst. Hopefully, he'll be making his debut on the decks this evening. And hopefully, we'll also be having Olugbenga George, who is a diplomatic aide, joining us on the second half of the program. Stay with us. All right, welcome back. It's now time for us to look at issues. We're beginning from the Ukraine invasion, where the Russian army launched a massive attack on Ukraine's energy sector, forcing emergency power outages as temperatures dropped across the country. Just to let you know that Ukraine's energy grid has been heavily targeted since Russia's invasion in February 2022, with Kiev accusing Moscow of terror tactics by trying to plunge Ukrainian cities into darkness and cut off heating to civilians throughout the winter. And that's one of the key issues the U.S. and the International Committee has said that it's against, the terms of engagement, and it was said that Russia should not target such facilities, just like Israel was told not to target when it comes to nuclear sites of Iran, because that would lead to massive loss of lives and catastrophe, and would indirectly mean calling for Third World War to begin in earnest. So what Russia is doing, obviously, is terror tactics, according to Ukraine, knowing fully well that winter is around the corner, and if the Ukrainians cannot get the heater to heat them, their bodies or warm their homes up, that's going to lead to systematic death of Ukrainians during the winter period. And so it's a very terror-like pattern the Vladimir Putin is employing in this war. But just to let you know that overnight strikes come after 2 weeks of the dramatic escalation, during which both sides launched new weapons to gain upper hand ahead of the inauguration of the United States President-elect, talking about Donald Trump, in January 2025. Meanwhile, Ukraine's energy minister, talking about German Galushchenko, said power infrastructure was under massive enemy attack after the nationwide air alert was issued for incoming missiles. Meanwhile, the Air Force reported a string of Russian cruise missiles and attacks drones heading for cities across the country, including the capital, Kiev, and also Kharkiv in the northeast, and the Black Sea port of Odessa. Meanwhile, the national power grid operator, Ukrenergo, had urgently introduced the emergency power cut, he added, as temperatures dropped to around 0 degrees Celsius, which is very scary. Meanwhile, energy provider DTEK said the Ukrenergo was introducing emergency power outages in the regions of Kiev, Odessa, Dnipro, and Donetsk. According to messages from the Air Force, the nationwide attack was ongoing as of 8 a.m. And very sad, President of Ukraine, in the person of President Volodymyr Zelensky's chief of staff, said the wave of attacks showed Russia was continuing their tactics of terror. They stockpiled their missiles for attacks on Ukraine infrastructure for warfare against civilians during winter, which is very disturbing. It's hoped that the United Nations will be coming or be speaking against these very tactics of terror against innocent civilians. Once these civilians are targeted, that's a very disturbing occurrence there. All right, hopefully we'll be joined via Zoom by our guest in the person of Jude Ndukwe, who is joining us via Zoom to help us look at these issues. Good evening, Jude. Jude Ndukwe, thank you for joining us on the desk.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you very much for having me.
Let's begin our discourse. Thank you for joining us. First of all, let's begin our discourse with what's playing out in Ukraine, where the Russian military have decided to target, the energy site of Ukraine, thus causing outages, blackout in the cities of Ukraine, which means that during winter, Ukrainians won't be able to warm themselves and their families up. And Ukraine is saying this is terror tactics by Vladimir Putin and his army. How do you see this playing out? Do you think this is a fair tactics by Russia aiming civilians and also aiming the energy sector site of Ukraine?
Well, by all means and by all standards, I don't think it can be referred to as a fair war tactics. Like the Ukrainians have described it, it is terror tactics. It's unfair on the Ukrainian civilians who have been under the barrage of bombardments from the Russians for close to 2 years now, to now be further subjected to a wicked exposure, to the coming winter. The Russians should have actually focused their attacks on military installations. As long as these energy sites are not, being used for whatever military purposes, I'm not sure it's fair in any way. If the military sites, if the energy sites were being used, for bombardments by the Ukrainians, being used for any military installations, any military purposes, then we can say, okay, it's justified. It has automatically become a military target, But as long as it remains a civilian service providing site, I don't think it should have actually been involved, in the bombardments, going on by Russia against Ukraine. That this is absolutely unfair. I'm feeling so sad for the Ukrainians right now, the civilian population, because especially when you know that this population will be, consisting of kids, and the incoming winter, it's a no-no for me.
So, because NATO is one of the center points of this conflict, the fact that Ukraine decided to join NATO, that's one of the reasons why Russia is in this fight. Do you think NATO has been fair enough in terms of the support given to Ukraine, especially with what is playing out there? Do you think NATO should have done more to protect Ukraine?
NATO should actually have done more long before now, because that is the only reason. That is the major reason why Russia, is invading Ukraine, so to speak. So I don't know why NATO should have dragged their feet for going to 2 years now, knowing full well that Vladimir Putin is a man who goes beyond, the ordinary to achieve whatever aim he wants to achieve. So I don't know if NATO right now, I don't know how NATO will be feeling. I don't know how the members will be feeling after the bombardment being undergone by Ukraine. What kind of moral rights, what kind of morality will be left for NATO to also want to, claim that they're supporting Ukraine, or that they want to welcome Ukraine into NATO? So the only way you can actually show and demonstrate support for a country that has, expressed interest in joining you, and which your body has not said no to, which you are also, welcoming, why must you allow the country to be obliterated and to be annihilated before you come to the rescue of such a country? At the moment the country expresses interest and you welcome that interest, the country becomes, part of you. So I really don't know why NATO dragged their feet, because if NATO intervened, I'm not sure this war would have, dragged till now. At a point, Russia would have said enough is enough, and then they would have probably withdrawn. That's just the truth, because for Russia to still be struggling to defeat Ukraine, going to 2 years, when some people actually thought within days or within weeks the war would have been over, Ukraine would have been run over by Russia, and going to 2 years, Russia is still struggling to overrun Ukraine, and even having reinforcements from North Korea. So it shows that Russia might not necessarily be as strong as the world is actually thinking. Probably the same thing when we thought Saddam Hussein of Iran in those days was strong, so strong that at the end of the day we discovered that it wasn't like that at all. So I was thinking that if NATO had intervened long before now, the casualties that we're experiencing now would not have experienced them, and then the war would have long been ended.
Let's come to Nigeria. Former Nigeria's head of state and the person of other statesman, General Yakubu Gowon, retired, has explained why he championed the creation of 12 states in Nigeria. When he was head of state, he said the rationale was aimed at dousing tension and removing the fear of northern domination by other component parts of the federation. He said this when the delegation of the Senator Ibrahim Shekaru led a League of Northern Democrats paid him a courtesy visit at the Yakubu Gowon Center in Abuja. My question to you is, the reason he gave and what we've experienced over the years, who is dominating who, and is there any change in terms of the fear that was entertained before now?
Well, I honestly speak, Gowon.
Question. I think there's a lot of signal there as we are currently in discussions. Conversation with Jude Ndukwe, who is a public affairs analyst. Hopefully, we will be able to reconnect and get our conversation on as regards. All right, Ndukwe, thank you for rejoining us.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. Sorry, Martin, network.
Do you, with what the reason former head of state Yakubu Gowon gave for the creation of 12 states, just to avoid the domination of the northern region by other components of the country? Looking at the number of presidency we've had coming from the northern region and the situation we have in the country now, would you say any part of the country is being dominated by other? And is that fear still feasible with what we have currently?
Yeah, General Yakubu Gowon's reasons to me are nothing but afterthoughts. Because even with the creation of the 12 states, we still had, the northern part still having more of those states. The former eastern region was splintered. We had River State created from the former eastern region, and then we had Cross River States also created from the former eastern region. Just to weaken, the influence of Odumogo Ojukwu then, who was, the governor general, so to speak, of the former eastern region. So that's number one. Then number two, when it says the fear of, just to douse tension about the fear of domination, from that period till now, we know very well that the Southeasterners have remained nearly perpetually dominated by other parts of the country, especially the northern part of the country. And the northern part of the country, so to speak, has systematically and deliberately, made things to be like that, using the advantage, the numerical advantage they usually have, probably at the National Assembly, based on the number of states they have, based on the number of regions they have. So you can imagine the northern region alone having 3 sub-regions, and then the southern region having 3 sub-regions. While the northern regions are, hegemonious, so to speak, the southern region is not that hegemonious. For example, the southwest, of course, we all know is dominated by the Yoruba. The southeast is dominated by the Igbos, and then the south, of course, we know is a mixture of peoples. So that has given the northern region the leeway, to continue the domination, whether it comes in terms of the president producing the president, in terms of ministerial appointments, in terms of, the domination is just look at the composition of the defense chiefs in the last administration. Just imagine that domination in a country where we have different ethnic groups, where we are pursuing unity in diversity, and then someone comes to tell us that the reason why he did what he did was to douse tensions, arising from division, marginalization, and then subjugation and all that. It has remained, in fact, it has become worse, and that is why the agitations in the southeast, and even in some other places, have increased. But for the emergence of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, even the Southwesterners were beginning to also agitate, against the domination of some people over the other. So I think the earlier we come together and say, let us apply the principles of fairness, justice, and equity to everybody, that make up this nation, the better. But as for the issue of domination, it still exists, it still persists, and it's even worse today than it was yesterday.
For you, the current administration, do you think we're seeing similar domination by a certain region also? And why do you think this is evident in every administration? Is it the loss of patriotism
Um,
or unity?
Unfortunately, yes, I see that domination also, in the current administration that has come from, the southwest. Unfortunately, or fortunately rather, I'm not going to, attribute it to the, to be part of, the systematic ruling of the southwesterners like it is in the north. Because when Obasanjo was in power, Obasanjo is also from the southwest. We saw how Obasanjo, tried his best possible, to carry all the regions along. So if President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has come to do otherwise, then I cannot attribute it to the entire Southwest. But our experience with the Northerners is absolutely different. Whenever any Northerner comes in, the first thing they do is to ensure that they dominate the key sectors of the economy, they dominate the security, they dominate, the judiciary, they dominate. And, then you begin to ask, the irony is that this northern region is actually the most diseased, the most illiterate, and the most poverty-stricken region in this country. With due respect, but that is the fact. We can't run away from that fact. And then you begin to question and ask yourself, how come this domination has continued? Well, it has continued because they have used their numbers. They have used their numbers to pass some things that are actually not supposed to pass. Unfortunately, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has continued to that state. I was thinking that he would come and try to lay a foundation for a better, more united Nigeria. But with the way it's going, tomorrow somebody else will come and say, after all, Tinubu did it, Buhari did it, so why should mine be different? We just pray that this cycle of trying to dominate, this is exactly, we should learn from history. This is exactly what caused the deadly war in Rwanda in the 90s, if we remember, between the Tutsis and the Hutus. So we need to learn from history. If not history in our country, we have experienced the civil war in this country before. So why are we not also learning from that civil war and also learning from the mistake of other countries? What is the essence of you putting all your cronies, all your privies, or your servants, or your agents from the same region in key sectors of the economy? And when people complain, if Tinubu makes an appointment, if he makes 10 appointments tomorrow, I can assure you that 7 or 8 of those appointments tomorrow will also come from the southwest. So the question is, where does the healing start? So it's sad, but I just hope that someday, sometime, we're going to lay a solid foundation where, like Obasanjo tried to do. That's why I will not paint the entire Southwest, with this brush of trying to dominate. No, because when Obasanjo came in, he scouted for the best hands, irrespective of where they come from. And we could see that Nigeria was being turned around for the better, even though we know that no government can be perfect, but of course we could see that the foundation was laid. And that foundation, Yar'Adua came in and tried to do even something better. Jonathan came in, continued that stead. Buhari came in and everything scattered. He shattered the spirit of unity, both at the regional and at the religious level. And it's so sad. And that is what has. So if Buhari had continued in that stead, and Tinubu continues in that stead, then we know that Nigeria is getting better. Nigeria is getting healing. Nigeria is getting healed. But as it is now, we just pray that things will get better somehow, someday.
We're going to the southeast where Ekpa is in the news this evening. He's on the desk as a pro-Biafran agitator. Samuel Ekpa, who was arrested in Finland for alleged terrorism-related activities, is scheduled to face charges May 2025, potentially according to Finnish authorities. A senior detective superintendent of Finland's National Bureau of Investigation, Mikko Laaksonen, confirmed to the media that the district court has set May 2025 as the deadline for his prosecutors to present possible charges against Ekpa. The Finnish government had last week announced the arrest alongside 4 others. Let's look at this now. It's been pushed for May 2025. Would this do Nigeria any good in terms of Nigeria's willingness and hope to extradite Samuel Ekpa back to Nigeria. How do you see this playing out? Some persons in the Southeast region is saying arrest, sentence Ekpa, release Kanu, Nnamdi Kanu. How do you see all this playing out?
Yeah, I think to a majority of Southeasterners, and I'm sure the entire Nigeria as a whole, by extension, are happy with the news of the arrest of Simon Ekpa because of his rhetorics that have caused a lot of harm in the Southeast. That have turned brothers against brothers in the Southeast. And a lot of the Southeasterners, thought that is not what Nnamdi Kanu is actually fighting for. That is not the system Nnamdi Kanu is using or deploying, to fight for the Biafran, so to speak, principle, because I see it as a principle. I see it as a principle. Yeah. So the principle of equity, the principle of unity, the principle of inclusion, the principle of equality. These are the principles that make up the Biafran spirit. So Biafra may not necessarily be a geographical location. Biafra is first and foremost a spirit based on principles. So if those agitating for Biafra today feel inclusive, feel included in the system, if they feel that they are given equal opportunities in the system, if they feel that no one region is trying to dominate the other, see, let me tell you something, the agitation will just wither away naturally. So Biafra is beyond the agitation for a separate and distinct geographical location. So what Simon Ekpa has been doing is actually against the spirit of Biafra, turning brothers against brothers. And that is why even IPOB themselves have declared that they don't even know him. He's not been working for them. And people will say, is it because he's been arrested? No. After all, Nnamdi Kanu has been arrested and is in jail right now. But IPOB has always stood by Nnamdi Kanu. Because Nnamdi Kanu's system, Nnamdi Kanu's way, Nnamdi Kanu's principles are radically different from the way Nnamdi Kanu will not come and tell you to start killing your brothers. He won't do that. He won't do that. So his ways are radically different from what Simon Ekpa is trying to claim.
Do you think Nigeria will succeed in extraditing him back to Nigeria to face charges? And do you think the 2025 date given is a decoy by the Finnish government?
Extradition cases are usually very intricate and very delicate. It is not something that you can just. There are some fine details, that will need to be, sorted. So, if we have, I think we do. If we have extradition treaty with Finland, then it becomes easier for any Nigerian arrested there to be extradited. And for the May 2025 deadline given, I think we should also work towards that. If the Nigerian government is serious, they can bring in EPA, and like people are saying, releasing Nnamdi Kanu, especially when we have had multiple court orders saying that you should release him. People are the same people who are saying releasing Nnamdi Kanu are saying you can go for Simon Ekpa. Simon Ekpa is our problem, not Nnamdi Kanu. So if the Nigerian government, gets serious about it, I think the extradition can work. But if the extradition works, I will also say that no matter the offense that any Nigerian has committed, home or abroad, that person should be subjected to a fair and credible judicial process. That's what I will say on that issue. So even if Simon Ekpa is, eventually repatriated, eventually extradited back to Nigeria, he should be subjected to fair treatment and to a fair judicial process that will lead either to him, being found guilty or otherwise.
Okay, on this one more talking point before we let you go. Looking at the tax reforms, that's where we're heading to. Before we let you go, the Senate has debated on the tax reform bills today, and it has passed the second reading. Subsequently, it's heading for the third. We know that the Deputy Senate President Jibril Bara, who presided over the plenary, hinted that the bills would likely be passed, and so it has passed. Looking at the hula bala that came, or the debate, the heated debate that came along with this debate, with this bill within the North and South, and the fact that it's about to be passed, it has passed the second reading. Do you see it passing the third reading, and eventually when this bill becomes law, how do you see this playing out at the end of the day?
Yeah, the fact of the matter is that right from day one, I knew that this bill would pass because of the determination of the president and his team members to ensure that it actually passes. Not because they want to become authoritarian or they want to impose bills of National Assembly, but because they actually have the wherewithal, they have the lobbying prowess, to lobby that bill, to be passed, to lobby the National Assembly, to pass that bill into law. And that's exactly what we're actually seeing. Like we rightly said, with the hula balo that initially created the introduction of that tax reform bill, to Nigerians, one would think that, the president will chicken out, probably begin to the subtle blackmails, from a certain region of the country, especially the northern part of the country, so.
I want to say thank you very much for all your deep analysis of all the different talking points we've raised on today's edition. I want to say a big thank you to Jude Ndukwe, who is a public affairs analyst, making his debut on the desk today. And I will urge you to enjoy the rest of your day. And hopefully, in the coming days, we'll be having you join us on the desk. All right, we quickly have Olugbenga George, who is also standing by from Lagos to join us in this conversation. Olugbenga George, thank you for joining us on the desk.
Thank you, Tony, for having me. Good evening.
He won elections by 436 votes, defeating Dele Atumbi and the outgoing national treasurer, who secured 97 votes, and Garba Muhammad, who polled 39 votes. A total of 602 delegates from Nigeria's 6 geopolitical zones, including the FCT, gathered in Owerri, the capital of Imo, to elect the new NUJ presidency and leadership. Are you what's your take as regards Yahaya emerging as the president, and are you confident there's going to be change of leadership or anything good coming to the NUJ, knowing that he has been part of the previous government or leadership that not much or have done the much they could do?
As I say, not much have done the much they could do. I'm wondering what you mean.
They have done the best they can do. Do you think he still has more to offer?
Well, yes, I believe that he has more to offer because it is a democratic process that produced him. And the Nigerian Union of Journalists is one of the organizations that I know that are actually democratic, true and true. They practice democracy. They exemplify democracy in the way.
You don't think the incumbency, the fact that he was already in the previous government, gave him this extra edge over the others who were also in the race?
Well, just as it is in every other political movement, that we have in the society, a first timer and somebody who has been in the system, there is usually a difference. People are quite familiar with the face, and they know the quality of leadership he can provide and bring to the table. I guess that is what has informed a pattern emerging, as this winner, and that speaks to the people's belief, that is, the journalist's belief in his ability to steer the ship, of the prestigious profession in Nigeria and move it forward, make it better, and make Nigeria more democratic and make the work of journalism more enjoyable across the board in Nigeria.
All right, as a journalist yourself, what are the key areas you think Yaya should be focusing on to ensure that the NUJ, Nigerian Union of Journalists, get the very best in terms of protections, the rule of law, and also safeguarding journalists when they get their job done? We also do the issue of journalists being winch hunted, not just by the government agencies, but even where they work. The fact that working condition of Nigerian journalists is not top-notch.
Well, I think I'd like to take it from the rear. Yes, the working conditions of journalists in Nigeria is quite despicable. As we speak, only few organizations actually play by the rules and remunerate journalists properly. One of the popular sayings in Nigeria is that journalists are poor people. I want to believe that this new leadership, will make more efforts. I mean, the administration of Isubuzo, the outgoing administration was they tried their bit, but I believe that more can be done in terms of putting the authorities under pressure, in order to achieve better remuneration for journalists. The journalists are going to do their convenience, all of those provisions should be looked into. So yes, I believe that it is a wake-up call, for Hassan Yahya, the new president of the NUJ in Nigeria. Also to other issues like you mentioned, Nigeria is at a very disturbing democracy in Nigeria is at a very disturbing rate right now. It is polarized. I usually say that that politics is polarized, even the media is polarized. But we must be able to look at the plurality and allow every stakeholder to have their say. It is a democracy that they say majority will have their say and minority will have their way. So it must be brought to practice in this new administration, and they must begin to see. I expect that there is more level playing field for journalists. There is a uniform voice, for the profession in Nigeria, especially because when you realize that there is some sort of dichotomy between some people who say they are big media, some are small media. The question is, who is doing the job? I expect it to be seen in this new administration.
All right. On the final note on that, the issue of the faction in the different chapters. How key is it for him to be able to, resolve the different, controversies and issues across the different chapters in the country?
It's very, very important, and I want to say that, in fact, because the profession, just like the country, is expanding and growing by the day. So you have new entrants coming in, and you have a lot of people, who are just trying to try what they think they can do, in order to showcase themselves, or maybe to do their constitutional rights themselves. So there's a whole lot of work to be done, especially for this leadership. But I must say that I have faith, just like the outgoing administration. Factionalization is just a normal thing in democracy. Because ideally, leadership has become about.
Olubenga George, we're sorry, that's how much time is going to allow us to take, and also the issues of that interference there. And that's how we're going to call it a wrap on today's edition of the program, The Desk. I want to say a big thank you to Jude Ndekwe, who joined us via Zoom for his very deep analysis of all the talking points, and also Olubenga George, who joined us from Lagos to give us his own take as regards the newly elected NUJ president. Congratulations, and this is hoping the very best for Nigerian Union of Journalists. My name is Anthony Momodu, saying thank you for joining me on The Desk.